Welcome to The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. I am your host, Janine Igliani, here with my co-host, Ryan Hatcher.
What?
And I'm so excited for our guest today. She is not only an Enneagram expert, which is something that I feel like is kind of really popular nowadays, so I'm super excited to dive in. But Anna is also just an amazing human being. You are so fun. So Anna's on our team. We get to work with her every day. She's brand new to real estate, killing it in real estate, like really putting yourself out there. You're killing the open houses. I love that. But we're not going to talk about any of that today. We are going to talk about you and the Enneagram. So before we go into that stuff, Anna, why don't you tell us about yourself?
My name's Anna Daniels. I have been married 12 years this weekend. I have a daughter named Gabby. We moved here from St. Louis, Missouri.
Shout out.
Yep. Actually, I didn't know Ryan. Somebody asked me if I joined the team because I knew Ryan. Missouri's a big state. And before that, I lived in Florida. I grew up there. And I also bounced back and forth between Puerto Rico, which is where my family is. So I spent a couple years there in like late elementary school. And so kind of back and forth a little bit there. Yeah.
Awesome. What brought you into real estate?
I actually started to learn about real estate in like right before COVID hit. We were looking to buy a house and we had just sold a house and I realized how little I knew about the process. I kind of just took somebody's word for it. And I really, trusted my agent. And I just realized that there was a lot of things that I probably needed to understand a little bit better for myself before jumping in again. So I started listening. I read Real Estate Investing for Dummies just to kind of like get the basics. And then I started listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast.
That's a good one.
Started learning about all of the avenues that you can make money in real estate. Mm-hmm. So it's been a journey, but it brought me here now. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Super cool. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, thank
you brought up something again, which is another thing that I just absolutely love about you is your thirst for knowledge. Yes. So you like to listen to podcasts.
I do.
Tell us some of your favorite podcasts that you listen to.
So
Bigger Pockets.
I do. Real estate wise, I also really like Hustle Humbly. Actually, before I got my license, I met with a successful agent back in Orlando, and she said that's the only podcast you'll need to listen to get your
that's cool.
to be successful in real estate. So I binged it. Like there was like 100 and something episodes, and I had an 8-hour layover in LA. And so I binged and listened to as many as I could.
Wow.
Right before jumping into my course. And
I love that.
Yeah.
It probably was like super inspiring, right?
Yeah.
Like, do this.
It was really good. So I like that one. I also like guilty pleasure wise. I like Celebrity Memoir Book Club. I love reading as well. And I also love pop culture. So it's just fun to listen to. It's two comedians. They discuss the books that they just read as it pertains to celebrities. So just fun.
Like the celebrities that wrote them?
So they don't interview the celebrities. They just discuss the book. Like they read a memoir that somebody wrote, and then they just kind of chit chat about the book and go over it. So yeah,
I love that. Do you listen to any podcasts, Ryan?
I little bits and pieces. I end up listening to audiobooks more than I do podcasts. Yeah.
Well, maybe one day someone else will give us a shout out and say,
maybe.
that Real Deal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'll toast you guys on Hustle Humbly. I've always wanted to write a toast on there. They do a toast at the end of the show.
I love that.
So they like shout out. So I'll have to shout you guys out.
That's awesome.
Write a thing, say that I want a toast to go out to you guys.
I love it.
Yeah.
Really quick before we jump in, I know I keep saying this to the Enneagram stuff, but I know when you and I originally met, that was one of the things that you talked about was your experience as a buyer or a seller and working with another realtor and how you were kind of disappointed and it made you realize like, gosh, I kind of think I want to help and be better for somebody, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a lot of things that now that I'm on the other side, I think, oh, this probably could have been done better, or this could have been explained to me better, so that I had known my options. And part of it is just like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
So now that I'm kind of on the other side of it, I see, things that I want to do differently in a way that helps people.
Can you remember one thing specifically?
We received a Binzer, and I know that the buyer, when we were selling our house, had like a long laundry list of repairs. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, you really want to make sure that you're telling your seller that you're focusing on just like the things that are going to matter as far as safety and things like that for the home, not necessarily cosmetic updates and, people wanting something just because they threw it in there, because we did everything that came back on the Binzer, and it ended up like our total was like $7,000. And I think we probably could have done it for a lot less and just done the main repairs that needed to be done. And it was also a conventional loan. So I know now that like a lot of those things didn't need to be done. And we did it, and the buyer didn't show up to closing, and we had to relist.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's devastating.
Which was great, but then, it was like, So then when we put it back on the market.
Really quick, was that state where you sign, you're in face-to-face buyer and seller, or no?
No.
Do you know, I don't remember what state it is, and this actually might be like a good quiz. What state is it in the United States where for closing, buyer and seller must meet at the table and sign across from each other? And I don't even know.
Is it New York?
I know New York is similar. I don't know if it's New York though, but like they have, and I just have heard from clients that live across in those places.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I was told,
like they end up arguing because they're pissed about things.
Yeah. I was told during one of my real estate courses that like you always want to ask people like, so where are you from? Just so that you kind of know, like, okay, well, have you bought and sold a house here?
Good point.
Like it's a little bit different here, or it might be different than where you're from. This is how it's going to play out on closing day.
100%. And honestly, that's such a good point. I have those conversations with my out-of-state clients too, where they're from California or Washington and they do things just a little bit different. And so then they come here and they have these expectations, right? Disappointment comes from missed expectations. And so trying to explain, that's where that communication, explaining that process is so important. So they know what to expect. And then too, when you have that buyer consultation or listing appointment, you hopefully have addressed some of those concerns ahead of time. So they're like, oh, okay, that's how that works, right? Because it's so different in certain different states.
Not only am I glad that we don't do the face-to-face in Arizona, we actually don't even like our buyers and the sellers or vice versa to even communicate at all.
Oh, yeah.
Because so many times things can get out of hand. Somebody says something that is misconstrued or misinterpreted, or they share too much information, and
I've had it where they think it's
helpful,
like all for good, like oh my gosh, and it never ends well, never ever. So it's just best that buyers and sellers don't interact.
Let the agents
at all
figure it out.
Exactly.
So you give me a thought. You were talking about the Binzer. So that's when in Arizona, it's when the buyer has the opportunity to submit a list of things to the seller that they would like them to fix before closing. And the seller gets to decide if that's something they will do. What's the craziest thing you ever saw in a Binzer?
Well, kind of to your point, the people wanting you to upgrade things. Yeah. Like cosmetic things. Like that's not the purpose of this, right? That's how it was when you bought it. This isn't a chance for you to get the house upgraded before you move in. It's to address major issues with the home.
Replace a functioning AC unit.
Right. Or just like, well, the water heater's, 8 years old. So can you upgrade that? No, it's working.
I remember,
and you don't know the life of it, right?
I remember seeing one of the line items was a little drip line cap. It's a little piece of plastic from Home Depot for about 30 cents. I'm like, just go to Home Depot. Why would you even put that on there? But
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. I love that though. And also that was like when I bought my house 5 years ago, the house that I'm in now, going through that process, even though I had been a licensed realtor for a few years or 4 or 5 years at the time, it was still a good reminder of what that process is like.
Right.
And you said this earlier, we do this every day, day in and day out. Most buyers and sellers only do it a few times in their whole life. So having someone that has that knowledge to walk them through that process, and also just to be a guide. I remember going through our house, and it was so funny. I always joke about this, but I told my husband, like, I wish we had a realtor to like talk to about this stuff, right? Because when you're in it, it's so emotional.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to have that like neutral third party that can kind of balance you and help you to process through things is so, so helpful.
Well, I think a lot of realtors actually have their peers sell their house.
Yeah,
I had
as
her
well.
technically sell mine
Right.
for that very
out of it,
reason.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little easier negotiation when you're not the one with the
Right.
Right. That's like when you look at a home and it says owner agent and their names match. You're like, oh dear, this is going to be rough.
Yeah, well, and often, to be honest, the value is overinflated,
Right.
Because they're pushing the line to see what they can get, and it's
You
tough.
weren't like that though, Ryan.
I wasn't.
You were a good seller. I would work with you again.
Not for a while though.
Yeah, right. No, you don't want to do it again?
Well, I don't want to sell anything. Yeah, I want to do the opposite actually.
Yeah,
Right?
I was actually telling somebody the other day that I was like and obviously, we all kind of look back and nobody, again, you don't know what you don't know, but we sold our house and it's like doubled in value. And I was like, oh no, I'm not selling my house again. I'm going to hold that forever.
In hindsight, it's always 2020. That's so hard,
right.
right? I was just having the conversation with a seller yesterday of when we went under contract on their house, but when we originally listed it, even though the market had already started to turn at that time, it's still much different than it was today, right?
Yeah.
That market of a few months ago is even different than our market is today. And having to like process through, and she was having a little bit of a regret of not taking an offer that came in significantly low at the time. But it's like, gosh, you just never know, right? And no one could have ever predicted any of this. So super hard. But enough of that, right?
Yeah.
Enough shop
Let's talk about the Enneagram.
That's more fun. That's more fun.
Yeah.
I love this. I'm
Yeah.
super excited
Yeah.
because you've been a great resource for me when it comes to understanding the Enneagram. And for those out there that don't know what it is, can you just give us like a quick little summary of what is the Enneagram?
Yeah. So I like to say it is a personality test of your soul.
Okay.
I feel like it's much deeper than a lot of other personality tests that I've taken. And actually, I had taken Myers-Briggs before, and I don't remember exactly what my thing came back as, but I remember like the nickname was like the mediator, and I am an Enneagram 9, which is the peacemaker. So I can understand that maybe that terminology makes sense for some other people, but the Enneagram just really resonated with me personally. I also think that I found it at a great time in my life. One of the things that I'll talk about a little more as we kind of dive in the conversation here is the book The Road Back to You by Ian Morgan Cron was an incredibly valuable resource for me, and I tell people to start there just because it's
I'm going to write that down and maybe I'll add it to my Audible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I was going to say, because before we started, I wanted to make sure that it was available on Hoopla, which is a library resource, and you can do it on audiobook or ebook through the library on the Hoopla app. So you don't even have to buy it if you, but if you do like one of those subscription things, you can do it that way too. But it really just gives you a very generic overview of all of the types.
So there are 9 different.
There are. And I have this pulled up from the Enneagram Institute, which is just like the basic descriptions of the 9 types. So the 1 is the reformer, and I'll also give like a brief overview on some of these. So the reformer, the rational idealistic type, principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionistic. The 2 is the helper, the caring, interpersonal type, demonstrative, generous, people-pleasing, and possessive. The 3 is the achiever. Ryan, you're a 3. Success-oriented, pragmatic type, adaptive, excelling, driven, image conscious. The 4, the individualist, the sensitive, withdrawn type, expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, temperamental. The 5 is the investigator, the intense cerebral type, perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. 6 is the loyalist, the committed, security-oriented type, engaging, responsible, anxious, and suspicious. I come from a long line of 6s. I have a lot of 6s in my family, and they kind of tend to...
My best friend is a
They
6.
tend to clump together. They tend to stick with all other loyalists because they just value loyalty. Number 7 is the enthusiast, the busy, fun-loving type, spontaneous, versatile, distractible, and scattered.
Did you say first child? Did you say that or no?
I didn't.
Oh, God, that's what I heard because my first child is a 7.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then 8, the challenger. Janine, you're an 8. The powerful, dominating type, self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational.
Oh, that makes me sound horrible.
Okay. We'll get back to that in a second. No.
We're going to have to qualify some of that.
Yes. There's like an Enneagram speak. You know, you kind of learn what some of these things mean. And then the last is the 9, the peacemaker, the easygoing, self-effacing type, receptive, reassuring, agreeable, complacent.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because when I first took the test, I took it through the Enneagram Institute. They do charge now. I think it's harder to find a free test.
True.
Which is why I encourage people to
I
just...
tried.
Yeah. Which is why I encourage people to just read The Road Back to You, because I think you're really going to get more out of it by understanding each of the types. And when you really read about them, one of them is going to be like, oh no. And you're going to feel exposed.
Yeah.
Like that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. But I also feel validated by
100%.
it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so this is like super, I'm going to get super deep here, but I've always struggled. I've always been told that I'm aggressive. That's the word, aggressive. And it's always been just like such a negative thing. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I don't mean it to be a bad thing. It's just who I am. And I've come to understand that that's who I am. But knowing that that's how I come off to others helps me to kind of temper it. And also I've made peace with it. Like, it's okay that I'm like that. It serves me well in certain situations. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, but I also give grace to others who perceive it as a negative, right? And so it helps validate me. For me, I feel validated.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And one of the things that I really like about The Road Back to You, something that he says that a lot of people, you know, will say that they don't like the Enneagram or whatever because it puts them in a box. And one of the things that I have found is that it actually just shows you the box that you're in because you're kind of doing these things. Yeah. And
if we had a quote, that's the quote from the show.
So it kind of, you might not be aware of some of the things that you're doing or how it's coming across or, you know, stuff like that. So it's been really helpful in just navigating relationships with people who are different than you. Yeah. Because for a long time, I feel like I can get along with pretty much everyone. Like that's like the highlight of the Enneagram 9. Like we get along with whoever. But sometimes people would just rub me the wrong way. And that really bothered me because I'm like, this isn't me. Like, I don't know why they're getting under my skin. And then now I kind of understand that there's like, you know, certain types that just, you know, not that, because I think that everybody has like all of the numbers have like their strengths and their, you know, weaknesses. But that I just, when they're not self-aware, makes it difficult for me. Because the thing is when you know, I have a friend who, I think under normal circumstances, it probably would have bothered me that she was so, like uptight because I'm pretty easygoing. Yeah. And so, but knowing that makes her who she is and that there's other parts of her that really is a struggle for her more so than it is like just her, you know, being difficult towards, you know, it's just, it's something that she is struggling with.
So my best friend, she may watch this, may listen to it. She knows who she is. She knows her, she's a 6. But her and I are so different in that way too, right? Where she tends to be anxious about like things. And I kind of am like, what is the big deal, right? And for me, it's helped me to give her grace, knowing that that's how she is. And it just is what it is. And understand that there's like something intrinsically in her that kind of is fueling that, right?
Right.
So it's like I can just make peace, which to me also relates to why this is really important, especially in our business, right? Where we're interacting with people throughout the day, tons of different people, is understanding who they are and what makes them tick. When we understand that, we can serve them better. So a big thing when I got into real estate was understanding the DISC profile and and kind of trying to identify a client in terms of where do they fall on that DISC. And that's like I very much a broader and a broader, I don't know, a test assessment than what the Enneagram is. And I don't think any of us could super identify what someone, you probably could because you're like this expert in it, but it would be a little bit harder for me.
Pretty close most of the time.
Right? You are.
Well, that's actually pretty funny because when you first were talking to us about this, you were kind of going around the room pegging what we were.
Yeah.
And you were right.
Yeah.
I think on all of us, right?
Yeah.
I
Except
think
for Brett. I still don't know about Brett.
well,
4. Okay.
It's interesting though, because when I took the test finally, I was on the border between a 3 and an 8, which is weird.
Yeah. So I actually was having coffee with somebody last week, and we had this conversation because I always find a way to work the Enneagram into a conversation. And she was telling me the same thing. She said, I asked her if she had heard about it, and she said, yeah, I think so. Somebody sent it to me. She said, I think I'm an 8 wing 3. And then I said, oh, well, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Your wings are going to be the numbers on either side of you.
Yeah.
However, 8 and 3 have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the end of the day, what's going to be different is your core motivator. And I think that I had sent Ryan like an Instagram post on like the mistypings of 8 and 3s, because for, you guys both like to win. You guys both like to be the best. But there are some differences in what's driving those behaviors.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things with the Enneagram when people actually was talking to Max, and he had said that, his wife was a 2. And a lot of times like Christian women, or he had mentioned that she was like a 2 or something, but she was actually a 7, or but that you kind of get like typecast or whatever, where people are like, oh, you're this, you must be this, like, so that does kind of happen. But
you have to dive deep into it to really, I mean, I think you had to do that, right, to validate yours.
Yeah.
And what I'm mostly interested in now is learning how to identify, like you can, what somebody may be, especially family members, and maybe just confirm that and have them do it. But then how do you work with them? What are the things that you need to know that will allow you to give grace or to better understand them and where they're coming from and why they are ticking the way they tick? I
mean, at the end of the day, in our profession where we are working with people so closely, knowing who they are at their core is just going to help us deliver a much better experience. And putting together a marketing piece for our team, and kind of the idea in it is talking about these are our promises that we'll make to you, but also understand that the biggest source of frustration and disappointment comes from missed expectations. So having said that, like, let me know if there's something that you need me to do or do better or do more or less of, so that I can meet those needs, because I don't want you to have frustration or disappointment, right? And at the end of the day, it's just a simple conversation. Some clients like more communication, some like less. Some want to be communicated via text, some want phone calls. One of my clients right now, he's like, Janine, don't email me, don't call me, text me. Like, he straight said that. And I was like, sweet. I love that you said that, because I will make note of it and I will serve you that way.
Yeah.
So
I also think it's really easy, or not easy, I shouldn't say, but it's, you can be more impactful that way and really, provide service in a way that it's going to matter to them.
Yes.
Because there might be something that matters to me that is just, you wouldn't care about.
Totally.
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 So I feel like it helps that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you know what Kara is?
I don't.
What's your husband?
He's a 4. Yeah.
Okay. Ray's a 2.
Yeah.
So my oldest daughter's a 7.
Yeah.
And we'll have conversations. In fact, she the other day was like, Mom, you know I have FOMO.
Like, I know.
Right? I know, honey. And she's taken the test a few times, and every time it's like a strong 7.
Yeah.
Like there is no, but you know what's funny is if I were to have guessed hers, I don't think I would have guessed that about her. But when I look deeper into it, I'm like, oh, okay, she is for sure that way. Right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's just kind of funny, but it's really helped me to understand like that's what motivates her. She's very motivated by wanting to have fun all the time, constantly needs to be busy. She's my child that will ask me, what are we doing tomorrow? What are we doing today? She just called me on her way home from school. Mom, I know she'll ask me, what are we doing? Like she's always all about that.
Yeah.
And if we're out or her friends are out, like she just feels like she's missing out. She tries to do everything and fit in. And it's just so funny to me. But knowing that about her, it's like, okay, I can understand. I can help her with it. You know?
We talked about the Enneagram this weekend with my daughter, who is 11. So she's still really young to understand a lot of these. However, she has been around us speaking about the Enneagram. Like it's like a second language at our home. Like we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when my husband first met Ryan, he was like, I said, what do you think he is on the Enneagram? And he said, I bet a 3. Like
That's hilarious.
So funny.
And so he was like, just from that, brief conversation, you can
which was like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
That's
you can
crazy.
kind of like, once you kind of fine tune. That being said, it is really important that the Enneagram is not used to weaponize people.
I love that. Yeah.
It's really, it's the best tool in understanding yourself and in becoming more in tune with yourself, which is automatically going to make you better towards other people. But I do try as well as I can, like, I can spot people pretty well now. But I do try to, you tell me what you are, because I really, at the end of the day, I don't know what goes on inside your head, inside your heart. Like it's just, it is going to be different for everybody. So you might be putting off something that I'm just, I might not know what's going on the inside. So I do try to, if I see that some things are kind of like, oh, you kind of might be this, so this might be important to you. But I try not to be like, oh, they're such a 3.
Right. Oh, good. I'm glad you didn't say 8.
No, it was funny because during our meeting earlier, when you were like saying something to your dad, it was just, I don't even remember what it was, but it was so funny. I'm like, classic. That's exactly what I expect.
I know. I'm definitely, I don't know what it is about my personality, but like it shows up. If I'm like an 8, like I'm an 8 all the way.
Yeah.
On the DISC test, like I'm a high DI. It's like, yep, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We did a color test. Have you heard of that?
So somebody had, actually the person that I was talking to about coffee over last week had mentioned that one to me. But there's like 4, right? So it's pretty, it is.
Yeah, it's more broad. Yeah. And Ryan and my dad were also the same color. Which is probably why I work so well with Ryan.
Yeah.
Right.
Funny.
Well, I think that that like real estate as an industry tends to lend itself really well to 3s. Like these are people who are goal oriented. There is like no cap. So like you can keep being the best and you can fine tune and become the best in other ways. So I do find that when I'm in a room full of agents, there's a lot of 3s.
Oh, no.
That actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Because in my previous career, I felt like there was always a ceiling, always a cap, right?
Yeah.
And it drove me crazy inside. I didn't talk about it with many people, but it bothered me.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Not having a limit on your potential. Right.
So, I mean, and that being said, like I was talking to my husband about it last night about how, we have like a 3, an 8, and a 9. And I think there are things about 3s and 8s and 9s that all make them really great agents, all in different ways.
Yeah.
I would say so. And that's actually such a good point, because that's one of the things I see with you is you have this really great ability to connect with people, Anna, in such a like casual, easygoing manner. I think that's a huge compliment. And I think it's going to serve you really well in this business, right?
sure.
Because it's all about relationships and connecting, and you're very likable. And so I think it's going to like draw people to want to work with you.
It is a humongous skill set in this
Yeah.
world. And I was actually just having a conversation with a elementary principal this morning, and we were talking about how the young generation now are going to struggle to have these types of conversations and make these relationship connections
Yeah.
because of technology and how they, I mean,
Everything is a text.
yeah,
Right.
it's almost overuse of that technology and not this.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I love this though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what else should we know about the Enneagram?
Okay, so I have a couple of notes here.
Let's do it.
So I did want to touch on the history of the Enneagram, because that's something that's not super, as much as it has become more mainstream recently, that's not something that's talked about often.
Well, and I think that's, sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
I
you're
think
good.
that's good because I know even I was slightly hesitant about getting more information about it because I didn't want it to have any like witchcraft connections, right? Like a horoscope does and can have that associated with it. And so, but it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was actually first originated in the 1960s in Chile, South America. And then it was studied by American missionaries, and then it was eventually brought over here. It really became first known when Father Richard Rohr brought it in the 80s. But it was still just left to the seminaries and like that kind of stuff, because it was believed to be like this resource that could be abused and was kind of like powerful. So they just decided that they would just keep it to like spiritual leaders and things like that. Now in 2016, Ian Morgan Cron wrote the book, The Road Back to You. That's actually about the first time I learned about it. I learned about it on the For the Love podcast by Jen Hatmaker. And then there was another book that was written shortly after or around the same time called The Sacred Enneagram by Christopher Hertz, which was also, my husband's like, that one was much more dry than The Road Back to You. The Road Back to You was also written by Ian Morgan Cron as a 4.
Okay.
So my husband's a 4. So I feel like that like checks out. I'm like the 5 is maybe a little more dry,
Yeah.
Actually, I actually think he might be an 8.
Oh,
Chris
funny.
Hertz might be an 8. So I think that his is more like direct, informative.
Yes.
As opposed to less like storytelling and things like that. So
It's funny because that's like a big thing for me. This is another little secret I'm getting. I'm giving away too many of my secrets of who I am, but I'm like, get to the point. In so many of my conversations, I think that because I'm such a like, again, that high D side of me of like, just get to the point.
Yeah.
Like,
I've seen that with my stories.
oh no, I love you though, Ryan. I don't mean it in a bad way, but I have to temper myself. It's funny, like my son, he loves to talk and I'm just like, oh, okay, what? But anyways, our church this weekend, our sermon, it was a different, not our head pastor that spoke, our lead pastor. And he was like all about these lists and all about these things that you could do, like a checklist. And I was like, this is the best sermon ever. Like, I love it. And to me, I realized, I think I really loved it because it was super direct and it wasn't as many stories. It was just like black and white.
Yeah.
Here you go. This is what you do. And I was like, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah. And then let me see. I think that was pretty much it. The other resource that I've read is the Complete Enneagram by Dr. Beatrice Chestnut. That one's more textbooky. Like that one goes into it goes into not only like the types, it goes into all the wings, and then there's like subtypes, which is a whole nother thing. So it's much more textbook like. But it was still, it helped, actually, especially my husband, because there was a lot of things about the 4 that, he was like, well, this mostly like, this makes sense. And all of these things like check all these boxes, but there's a subtype of 4 that looks like a 3. And so when he first took the test, he he was a 3. And so he's like, yeah, but I'm not. Like, he didn't feel the way I did when I was reading about the 9. And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody's been in my brain. And he didn't get that. So he was not as into it in the beginning because he was like, I think that's like a woo-woo thing.
Yeah.
And then he started learning about the 4 and he was like, oh, that makes sense. But then as he learned about the subtypes, he was like, that makes sense. So it's
I kind of feel like with my husband, he's a 2, but he's not as strong of a 2 as I am an 8, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So he thinks sometimes he's like, am I a 1? Like he kind of, and so maybe he's a 2 wing 1 or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's very possible. Cause you'll have both, like you'll have both on either side. So I'm a 9 wing 8. I lean pretty heavy on the 8 side. But I think as I've gotten older, I lean into the 8 more. I used to probably be a little bit more towards the 1 side when I was younger. But I think like as I've gotten older and learned more, matured more, I've probably leaned more the other side. So yeah, you'll have both wings. But then you may be like a certain subtype that tends to present in a way that, might look a little different. So it's fun stuff.
Yeah. Okay. If you could give like a quick little summary without your notes, I'm going to quiz you on the different types.
Yep.
Maybe give us like strength or weakness or whatever you want to share. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So type 1, what would you say?
Organized. So organized. Yeah.
Okay. Type 2?
They're going to be there for you.
Okay.
Yeah. They're going to be the friend that shows up when nobody else does.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
All right. 3?
3 make excellent leaders.
4?
Boom.
4, they're... I'm laughing because it's like my husband.
Yes,
So I'm like, he's not going to like when I say this.
Aww.
But 4s are I would call it a silent strength. They're going to sit with you when you need somebody to just be sad with you or to just kind of, not make a lot of noise, but be there.
Yeah,
So,
I can see that.
yeah.
Brett.
Yeah.
Number 5.
So 5s are really smart. They're the engineer. My dad's a 5. He's an engineer. So I would say the smartest person in the room might be a 5.
Okay. 6?
6 are the ultimate friend. You want a ride or die. You want a 6.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's my best friend's a 6. All
Yeah.
right. 7?
7s are so fun and hilarious.
Yeah.
Maybe not intentionally hilarious.
Yeah.
Like they're not funny because they're telling jokes. Like they're funny because you're like, what?
Yeah. All right. 8?
8s are always going to root for the underdog. You want somebody to go to bat for you. You want an 8.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
They're going to
true.
have your back.
Yes. That's so true. All right. And then 9?
The 9 is going to be down for whatever.
I love it.
I'm
Like
I'm up for
easygoing.
I'm up for anything.
Yeah.
Just don't make me choose. Don't make me make the decision.
I think my other really good friend is a 9.
Yeah.
I need to ask her. I think this would be cool, like to test each other.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my family test. And do
Yeah.
It is. It's good.
I have to know.
Yeah.
I don't know for Chase and Mallory, but
Yeah.
for Elise, like super clear. Ray, super clear. Yeah. And then I'll sometimes send you or my dad stuff because I'm like, this is so you.
Yeah.
Right? Or like, yeah.
I save them.
Yeah. It's fun, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else we should know? Or any other resources? What if someone wants to like get into this? They're like, oh my gosh, this sounds so cool. What should they do?
So my best advice is to start with The Road Back to You.
Okay.
Listen to it.
So read the book or listen to it.
it or read it. I really do think it is the best resource for beginners.
Even before taking the test?
I do. I think it's better than taking the test,
Okay.
personally. Because it's going to give you a really good overview of all of the types. And then there's going to be one of them that just really sticks with you. And you're going to be like, it should make you feel exposed a little bit. Like, it's funny because when I was reading the 8 and you were like, that sounds terrible.
I know.
That's kind of what your type is going to make you
Right.
feel like. You're not going to be like, isn't that awesome or hilarious? You're going to be like, how do they know that about me? That's the one that you probably, because all of them have good stuff, but then
Yes.
everyone kind of buries their dirty
Yes.
laundry and you don't want anybody to know these things. So when it's kind of like exposed, that's probably what you are. But it does give you an insight to all of the other ones.
Yeah.
And it makes you think. So like am I this one? Or what about this one resonates with me? You know, and it'll really help you navigate it yourself, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah. When you look at just all that you've learned, what would you say has been like the most valuable or impactful? What has had the biggest impact on you?
So my husband and I did it together. It was something that I was on board with before he was. Like I said, it took him a little bit longer to come around and to really understand it. But for us to, one, you understand yourself so much better. But it also gave us like a language to understand each other. And to not see things in each other as you know, good or bad or whatever. But it's also helped us in, like, my husband will call me out. He's like, you're doing that 9 thing again. You're doing that thing where, you know, you're kind of withdrawing. Like, you need to, you know, face this head on. So it is helpful to have somebody like
an accountability partner.
Yeah, it really is. Like, to kind of, because once you know these things about yourself, like, you kind of want to lean into your strengths. So being able to, one, notice it for myself, but then also to have, you know, like I said, my husband be able to hold me accountable in that way has been really, really good.
I love that. You know, when you were talking, you reminded me, for me, one of the things, because I do try to learn as much about being an 8 as I can. And one of something I read was saying how 8s tend to be very, like, annoyed with, like, they're the first to, like, as soon as the light turns red, they want to go. Yeah. That's me 100%. My husband's I'm always like, it's green. And he's like, I'm going. Like, I'm like, well, you should have gone. So I, like, get so frustrated. If someone asks me, like, what's your pet peeve? I will tell you it's bad drivers. Like, I just have, like, the worst road rage. And knowing that about myself, I feel like, okay, Janine, it's not a flaw. That's just how you are. And I feel like it kind of takes that away, right?
Yeah.
So it helps for sure.
Yeah.
And I'll send stuff to my family. See?
Yeah.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
This is like in my personality, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because Ray's like the opposite, like super patient. Like I said, I'm always like, let's go. The light's green, go right now. And he's like, I'm going. Yeah. You know, it's just like, we're so different. But that's probably why we've been married almost 20 years,
and
right?
I think that on the Enneagram Institute page, so there's like a website, Enneagram Institute. I think on that page, if I remember correctly, there is a resource that, like, tells you, like, couples typed with whatever, or maybe it's like in relationship.
Oh, that's cool.
So it shows you what your relationship
tips and tricks.
I think it shows you, like, this is what a healthy relationship between a 9 and a 4 looks like. This is what it looks like when you guys are not, you know, on the same page, or, you know, somebody's checked out, or so that is really helpful as well.
Yeah. I follow a page that's all about a 2 and an 8 are married, and they talk so much about that.
Yeah. Another resource actually is the Typology podcast, which is Ian Morgan Cron. And he just goes into, you can go in there. It's a library. There should be tons of episodes. So if you're interested in learning about just your type, you can look and find. And then there's also, like, he'll do couples. But I do think it's helpful to really listen and learn about all of them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Awesome. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
You ready for our rapid fire?
Yes.
It's fun. We'll go easy on you.
This is an Enneagram 9's worst nightmare, being put on the spot.
We'll go easy on you.
Okay.
All right. Question 1. If you could have any superpower, what would you choose?
Oh, teleportation.
Ooh.
My family lives in Florida. Also, I am not a good driver. Yeah. And so I really would just rather just show up somewhere.
I love that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
If you had unlimited money to start a business, what would it be and why?
Oof. So I like these, like, have you guys heard of, like, the laundry, like, type services where it's like Uber or whatever, you, like, set it outside,
I love that.
and then somebody else does your laundry and then brings it back folded and stuff. I feel like
Talk about dirty laundry.
Yeah. I feel like I would really value that. So I think that just, like, providing that as a service,
I've often thought about that, seriously.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, I have
my
kids.
least favorite.
They can do their own laundry.
Yes.
Why would I pay for it? Okay. What famous actor would you want to play you in a movie?
I'm going to go with Jennifer Lopez.
I love it. I was thinking that. I was so thinking that.
I was like, yeah, Jenny from the block.
That's awesome. I totally was thinking her.
What inspires you?
My family. Yeah. Love my family. Everything I do is for my family.
Yes.
So love it.
I love that.
My biggest inspiration.
All right. Oh, no, wait. Did you change the questions?
I did.
Oh, my word. Okay.
You have 5.
You threw me off. What is your favorite movie of all time?
Mean Girls. It came out when I was in high school, you know, like, so it was like, it really shaped my worldview.
Yeah, right? Yes.
Yeah,
That's
it was a good
awesome.
one. It's still funny.
Yeah.
Still relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably always will be to some
Yeah.
extent, right?
Yeah.
What's the best vacation you've been on?
So a couple years ago, it was 2018 to 2019. We spent some time in Australia, and we got to see like the fireworks at New Year's on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So that was really cool. They're one of the
super
first
cool.
places that like rings in the new year. So it was really cool.
Did you see any like humongous spiders there?
I didn't.
Oh my goodness, that's good.
And I think that people say that like, and I mean, obviously like they have that.
Right.
But like not in like people's houses.
Okay, good.
You know?
Because I've seen those videos where they're like as
Or at
big
least not
as
the
your
houses
face.
I was in.
Right? Okay.
Maybe in other people's houses.
What do you feel most passionate about?
The Enneagram. Like I said, I find a way to work it into a lot of conversations. If we
love it.
talk, we're going to talk about it eventually.
I love that.
So I love it.
Cool. What was your first job?
My first job was at Gainesville Health and Fitness Center. I worked at the kids club. So watching kids while their parents worked out.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. What are you most proud of in your life?
My family. My family. Yeah.
That's cool.
Last one. Do you think that everyone should look into the Enneagram?
I do. I do. I mean, I try not to push it on people. If they're not ready, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it is really helpful. So I think it's something good to know.
This has been so much fun.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you,
having
Anna.
me.
Thanks for sharing all of your knowledge with us. So fun and just so valuable. You're a great resource when it comes to the Enneagram. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like our podcast and subscribe to our channel. We would really appreciate
Smash it.
that.